the next part. Out of the hollowed out tree, the two little people waddled over to Benson, now with his undone window. They were wearing a strange uniform that looked like the old children's play toy, the monkey sitting with the two symbols, with the Masonic hat. Except their vests and their pants, instead of striped yellow and red, were dark purple and green. They even had rounded hat tassel coming off the top of their hat. After talking to Benson, one of the little people waddled his way to the back of the limousine. He opened the door to look inside, only to see Darlin's legs and Disco frantically barking. With great fear, the little man jumped back and closed the door. After checking the trunk the little man came from behind the limousine into the sight of his partner and gave an approving nod. Darlin could see the little man gesture to Benson to move on. As the limousine started to accelerate across the drawbridge, the creaking boards of the wood made peculiar sounds. And through the castle's outer wall, Darlin observed that the wall must have been at least 25 feet thick. She did not recall any of this from when she was a child, but secretly she too had watched that special on the History Channel about the castle. As they drove through the center of the wall, she could see a small tunnel lit with torches, tall enough for a little person to walk through. She looked on her other side and she could see that the tunnel went both ways as far down as she could see. As the limousine emerged from the darkness of the tunnel, the sun momentarily blinded Darlin as she was still standing in the sunroof at this point. After adjusting her eyes with her hand, she came face to face with the actual castle itself. The castle was made of the same stone as the outer wall, but seemed to be more eerie in appearance. There was no purple vinage either. Outer wall was just black mold that you see on the really old churches. I mean power stations. The castle looked like a cross between a Disney creepy castle and Mount Newell vibe from the Dr. Seuss stories. There was five massive towers, each rising higher than the next, and all the towers seemed to possess the same characteristics of the turrets on the outer walls, but much larger in scale. They each had their one opening and were 5 times taller than any lighthouse she had ever seen. Now, as the limo was approaching the last 350 yards to the castle, its silhouette seemed to cast a shadow that sent chills down Darlin's back. As they drove out of the sun and into the shaded area, Darlin was reminded of the size of the castle, for the shadow seemed to have its own chilling temperature. All throughout the courtyard stood magnificent manicured hedges carved into an array of living, breathing statues. Darlin could see a few little people up on tall ladders with different types of machines working on the hedges. It was shaped into, the one she was staring at was shaped into a 25-foot hourglass. Edward Scissorhands himself could not have sculpted something this beautiful and detailed. As the shadows seemed to get colder and colder and darker as the limo proceeded forward, Darlin reclused back into the limousine, shutting the windows in search of some warmth. Looking out the window at ground level, Darlin could now see more crews of little people waddling and doing various jobs all over the grounds. She found one particular a sculpture of a wine glass quite amusing. Puzzled as it seemed to defy gravity. She was puzzled as it seemed to defy gravity. As they approached the front of the castle, the limousine veered right as it went around a giant turnabout. In the middle of the turnabout was an elaborate fountain of a twister, the company's crest, which was four direction pointer, north, east, south, west, that you see. Oh no, that's the thing. It's all basically the. Oh, this is all messed up. Sorry, it's I got it from an email. Basically, on top of this twister was a pointer, north, south, east, west, from like a map. Is what I remember. The only difference was that the south and north were switched about. South was on top. I suppose it's to say that the twister had swirled about the four winds. The limousine made its final turn and came to a stop in front of the long stairs leading to the castle. After hearing a little bit of rustling about, Darling could hear Benson opening the door. She felt the limo shift as his massive weight left the limousine. A few seconds later, the door was opened and Benson offered his hand to help Darling out of the limousine. Darling placed one foot out of the limousine and looked up at the castle and was mesmerized by its stone-cold demeanor. Let's keep in mind, in this dream, that I woke up in the middle of the night and the first thing I did was check to see if I was a girl. Like, it was a vivid dream. It's crazy. It was. And I remember, like, this castle. Darling placed one foot outside the limousine and looked at it and was mesmerized by its cold demeanor. It was taller than any other building in downtown Kansas. Darling placed the disco on the lightly pebbled ground, then commanded, "Go potty." Disco barked twice and scurried off to do her business. As they waited for Disco to do her deed, Benson said, "You know, I seen a TV special on this castle, but the cameras can't quite capture the presence of it." Darling responded, "It looks like a creepy witch's castle. Wait until you meet my grandma. She's a real piece of work." Benson replied, "I just think the whole thing is so neat." Excitedly, he motioned Darling up the stairs. Darling called out, "Disco! Disco!" And Disco pranced out from underneath the limousine and followed them up the stairs. Benson asked, "What is it with all these little people?" Darling responded, "You mean the midgets?" "I don't know. I think she runs some sort of foundation or something. I don't know. I don't like to talk about it." Benson offered, "You know, little people is a politically correct term. They like to be referred as." Darling did not answer. Benson muttered to himself, "I guess it's true. The richer they are, the more eccentric they are." On either side of the staircase rose a stone wall about 3 feet high. On the stone railing, there were torches spaced out at every landing. As Darling and Benson walked up the stairs, a group of businessmen in black suits came out of the massive red wooden doors at the front of the castle. They met up about halfway up the stairs. "Good day to you, madam," one of the men said, as she passed them on the stairs. Disco was confined in Darling's arms as soon as she had seen them emerge. Because of her constant need to meet and greet everyone, Darling always picked her up. Darling thinks it's Disco's defense mechanism, just to act really cute. She always ran up to people, licking them, jumping, looking very cute until they acknowledged her. Then she would run back to Darling. Then Disco would always run back to Darling. Darling thought this was a real clever of Disco, because who would hurt a 2.5 pound cutie pie, just wanting acceptance from someone. Disco would even try this on other dogs, and it always seemed to work. Yes, it is a good day, Darlin responded to the man, actually thinking it was the worst day she had ever had. When they finally got to the top of the stairs, both were huffing and puffing from the strenuous walk. Even the great Lance Armstrong would need a breather after a hike up these stairs. They were greeted by three little men. One spoke in the deepest voice Darlin had ever heard. She almost started to laugh, but could recall meeting this one before. It was the voice that she remembered. It was a voice she had remembered. How odd it seemed that such a little person could have such a deep voice. Are there any bags to carry? Or are there any bags to carry up? The deep voice of the little man asked. Yes, in the trunk, Benson replied. The two of the little men marched down the stairs to retrieve the bags. Then the deep-voiced one looked up at Darlin. You probably don't remember me. My name's Thurston, your grandmother's personal assistant. Darlin responded, looking down at him with a cockeyed smile. I remember you. After looking about in almost a paranoid fashion, Thurston, up on his toes, then with an almost whisper, oh, okay, the punctuation. Basically, he got up on his toes and whispered, you've really grown to be a beautiful lady. Then, almost instantly, his voice changed back to normal, slightly louder, as if he was trying to be heard. Your grandmother has instructed me to show you, the both of you, to your suites and to make you as comfortable as possible. Suite? I think I'll be lodging with the servants, stated Benson. Oh, well, normally you would, but our lodge is fit for our size, and I'm afraid that you just wouldn't work, replied Thurston, as he looked at the big man up and down. Darlin giggled at the thought of what their quarters must look like. She imagined a Smurf village filled with midgets, where everything was small enough for them to function, with small beds, cups, even miniature-sized appliances. Lead the way, Thurston. I need to get out of this uniform, explained Darlin as she wiped the sweat from her brow. Then all three went through the red wooden doors. The main entrance, along with the whole first floor, were designed and dedicated to the company, South Corp. Although this was Miss Haywood's home, it was also head office and the executive branch of South Corp. It was also where Miss Haywood did her scientific research, and the lady rarely left the grounds. The entrance did not look like a castle at all. It looked more like the main lobby of the Chrysler building, with all of the company's memorabilia. Except, instead of cars from the past, this area showed South Corp inventions. These were the crown jewels of the South Corp Corporation. On display were a few of the original prototypes the company had made over the many years. This truly was an interesting collection of items. On one wall, it looked like a military armory. South Corp's military division is the leading defense contractor within the United States. On display were inventions such as the OZ-114, the predecessor to the Patriot missile used currently by the U.S. government. Also on display was the G5 and G6 Oz masks, displayed on lifelike mannequins. There was also a jet engine for the Concorde jets that she had designed. See, a free energy device there too. I was really onto something. I think I really think the message that it wanted me to get out with this was that fiction really is true. You know what I mean? Anyway, on the other side to the left, it looked like the evolution of the broom. These being some of the earlier inventions, were encased in glass. They were lit up with an ever-changing light, covering all the colors of the rainbow. The first was the nylon broom, invented shortly after Miss Haywood had stumbled upon a chemical compound called polyurethane. Next was the squeegee mop, another big seller for the corporation, and was used in almost every home in USA for many years. Going down the wall, you begin to see some of the more recent inventions, such as the upright bagless vacuum, the Swiffer line, which was the pride and joy of Housewares division. As Darlin went by, she must have seen over 100 other items on display, but we don't have time to talk about that. On the back wall, just past security, there were 6 golden elevators encased with green marble. They each were manned with little men in uniform waiting to take businessmen to whatever floor they needed to go. As they made their way to the security check, Darling could see Benson was falling behind as he was trying to read the little plates on each display. By the time Thurston and Darlin reached the security gate, Benson was nowhere in sight. Thurston quite grumpily huffed and went back, only to find Benson posing beside a copper metal diving suit. He asked the passerby to take his photo. Sorry, I just had to get a shot of this. My mom was a big fan of 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea, explained Benson. Annoyed, Thurston replied, "There will be time for that later. Shall we continue?" Turning on his heel like a military man and walking back towards the security check, Thurston picked up speed. First, they passed through a metal detector manned by a full-size security guard. I guess things would be awkward for the little people to do this job. They would not be able to reach people with their... I don't even know what that word, and they would have one heck of a time trying to lift people's bags to inspect them. So she had to outsource real people. Both Darlin and Benson emptied their pockets into the trays into black glass trays to be inspected. This reminded Darlin of going through airport security. Thurston began to explain the high level of security. "Sorry, miss, we had to install the metal detectors as some death threats have been made against your grandmother over the years." Once in the elevator, Thurston gave the head nod to the elevator worker. He was much younger than Thurston. He had no hair and did not look like he enjoyed his job at all. The doors closed as the elevator started going up. The first 4 floors of the castle were primarily used for the corporation. In order for the elevator to go past the 4th floor, the elevator man had to enter a code and give his thumbprint. While he was doing so, Thurston explained security had been beefed up the last year after a breach of the upper levels by an angry stalker of your grandmother's, some ex-crazed Hollywood type. You know, it's the fifth floor, the elevator dwarf said as he opened the gate. As soon as they stepped out of the elevator, Darling could see that this part was not decorated for the public, and it looked more like a castle again. "Follow me to your suites are in the west wing of the castle," Thurston said. Darling put Disco down and they began to walk down the dimly lit walkway. There really was not much to this hallway. There really wasn't much. See, some words are like amalgamated together. There really wasn't much to the hallway besides being very long. It was made of castle stone and was not heated. When they came to the end of the hall, Thurston said, "Darling, this is your room. It, it was your mother's old room, and your bag should be up here momentarily. If you should require anything, there is an intercom inside that you can get a hold of us at any time. Besides that, the fireplace is there as well." Darling was tempted to ask Thurston what the heck was up with that deep voice. Instead, where and when will I be? When will I be meeting up with my grandmother? And do you know if my mom is still coming? Darling inquired. "I don't know about your mother, but Lady Haywood will be meeting you for dinner in the second hall. I will be back to come get you both at 5:45. Now, Benson, if you would follow me, I will show you to your quarters," Thurston replied, all done in a deep voice. After turning the doorknob, then turning around to see Thurston, Benson walking back the way they had just come, while still walking away from her. Darlin asked, "Will this be a formal dinner, or with other guests, or will it just be me and Grandma?" Thurston replied, "As far as I know, it will be just the two of you." Still waddling away and even turning around, Darlin watched the two walk down the hall and smiled. She thought it looked funny seeing a 6-foot-something man weighing over 300 pounds next to a dwarf that was less than 3 feet tall and 30 pounds. Darlin opened the door and followed Disco inside the room. The room was a lot warmer than the hallway that she had just left. A fire had been lit ahead of time, and she was happy. I'll leave it there.